Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful afternoon on Thursday. So here we have a bit of an interesting segment that we're going to be doing. We're going to be covering the NBA draft in its entirety. Yes, in its entirety. So I'm going to go over literally every single pick that came in this I was in this draft. I'm going to talk about them, and I'm not going to do I'm not going to do an essay on all of them, like, mind you, but I'm definitely going to talk about a lot of the players that were picked from the draft, and I'm going to give them my grades. I'm going to give my opinions on them. I'm really going to look a lot more deeper into the top 10 picks. Then I'm going to look at the rest of the picks, as I'm not really going to have enough time to do all of that. Then in the second segment, we are going to be talking about the Los Angeles Lakers and how I feel. We're going to do the draft in two segments. So we're going to talk about, but in the second segment, I'm mainly going to focus on the Los Angeles Lakers and how, in my opinion, I think they got the best steal in the entirety of the NBA draft. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then in the third segment, we are going to talk about OG Anunoby and his contract extension with the New York Knicks. So, obviously, like I said, that the Knicks, they needed to try desperately and try and re-sign him, and they ended up doing that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that in the third segment. And then in the fourth segment, I'm going to focus a little bit on Bronny James, because the second round of the draft is going to happen later on today. And there's a lot of speculation on whether Bronny's going to get drafted, whether he's not going to get drafted. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then we also have a fifth segment that I like to reveal at the end of the fourth segment. So be sure to stay tuned all the way until the end to figure out what that segment's going to be. Before I begin, however, I like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. And with that out of the way, let's go right ahead and review the, we're going to focus a little bit on the top 10 picks in the draft, and we'll see how much time we have left. And depending on how much time we have left is going to be dependent on what I do in the next segment, whether I focus entirely on the kid that got drafted by the Lakers, or I focus entirely on the the rest of the picks after the top 10. So this thing with image. All right, so here is your number one pick in the NBA draft. His name is Zachary Risatcher. Forgive me if I completely mess up that name. He was selected number one overall by the Atlanta Hawks. He is also from France. So the Atlanta Hawks, they decided to copy the Spurs and be like, okay, let's draft someone from France as the number one pick. Now, this is the first time in the history of basketball, I believe, that the number one pick has been from France in back-to-back years. First time that's ever happened. And I did expect a French player to get drafted number one in this draft again. I just didn't expect it was going to be this particular French player. I can't even lie. Victor Wembanyama holds him to a very high regard, according to the draft analysts on draft night. And he is held in pretty high regard on the French team. But in my opinion, my personal opinion, I don't think this was the right pick at number one. I genuinely think the second pick, Alexander Sarr, is a much better option and a better pick than drafting Zachary Risatcher. Again, I'm still trying to learn the last names. Risatcher, as opposed to this one. I believe Alex Sarr is a much better pick than the number one pick in the draft, because he plays at the center position, which is the position that the Hawks desperately needed. And so essentially, Zach is, he's the number one pick, but he wasn't really the center. So while he might be I watched his film, and it's like I genuinely like I don't know. I'm not a big fan of him. Like it might just be me. I'm genuinely not a big fan. There's somebody in the chat saying, "Where do you think Bronny James going?" All right. To be fair, I don't really think he's going to get drafted. And if you want to hear a little bit more about that, I'm going to talk about that in the fourth segment. So just be sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll go a lot deeper into why I think Bronny isn't going to get drafted. But so as of right now, I think the Hawks, they messed up. I genuinely think they messed up because this is just, ugh, this is not this is not it. This is not a good pick, in my opinion. Like, this player right here, I don't really think the Hawks did a good job in picking him. But I would have gone with Sarr, and props to the Wizards for actually trying to go and get Sarr. And honestly, it's like, that could be considered a steal in the future. Because, and yes, indeed, Bucks raised bolts. I do agree with you. The Lakers got a steal, and I'm definitely going to talk about that a little bit in the second segment and how I think it's a steal. So, next in the draft, the Rockets, they ended up reclaiming their third overall pick from the Brooklyn Nets, and they ended up selecting Reed Sheppard. Now, Reed Sheppard and his shooting splits are insane. I believe I saw he was shooting 52% from 3 and 54% from the field. Like, his shooting splits are ridiculous. And obviously, this is a league that values shooters. Like, a beautiful league that values shooters. I genuinely, I think that this is great. I think this was a great pick. Honestly, I'm still I'm looking at my notes and I'm looking at my grades. That's why it's a lot of players that I have to go over and a lot of notes that I have to scroll over. And with Houston, with their history of taking a bunch of threes and shooting a bunch of threes and making a bunch of threes, I think this is a pretty good fit. And they are still in the talks of negotiating with some other teams and trades. Maybe they'll get Kevin Durant, who knows. Oh, wait a minute, I completely didn't switch out the picture. This is who he is, pardon me. Excuse me for that. But yeah, this is Reed Sheppard, and I think that's a great pickup. And this draft, it's not really, a lot of people are thinking that this draft is a little bit weak, and a lot of these players aren't going to be really good going into this draft, but I feel like a player that shoots 54% from 3 is a very, very good pick. And that's, honestly, I genuinely just, hold on just one second. I'm looking at my notes. And for the rest of the players, and I think drafting him so high at number 3, I mean, it is incredibly valid, especially with how the Rockets have their offense and their rotations and their substitutions. I thought that center from UConn was going to be drafted a little bit higher. I thought Houston was going to think of drafting him, but then I realized that they already had Sengun, so it didn't really make sense drafting him. Now, the 4th pick in the draft is Stephon Castle, and he is genuinely I think he was on UConn, right? He won the championship several times. I think he's a very, very good pick as well. He wasn't that good offensively. He's not a very good shooter, but still, very solid pick in the draft. His defense is also great. Pairing him with Victor Wembanyama is also going to be fantastic because he's a great playmaker and he's an unselfish player. Teaming around the same age as Victor, that's a great duo right there. And they'll develop. Obviously, I think his shot is going to develop. His defense is going to develop tremendously because he's already a very competent defender, and he has a cool name, Stephon Castle. So next on this list is, I give that an A+, by the way. Oh, so with the drafting, I give the number 1 pick a B. I give the second pick an A+, and the third pick a B+. Now, in this, the next player is Ron Holland II. He played on G League Ignite. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with the G League Ignite, that is a G League team that is responsible for creating a lot of NBA, or recently responsible for creating some really good NBA talent. An example is Jalen Green. He played on Ignite, I believe. And also Kuminga, he was on Ignite. He's also a fantastic player. So the Pistons, they decided to go with Ron Holland II, and I think this is a great pick for the Pistons. Obviously, getting the 5th pick in the draft, that's like they got robbed yet again, but they took advantage of it, and I think this is a great pick. Now, here we go with the very questionable pick from Charlotte, and that is Tidjane, forgive me if I botched that name, Salon. Now, this is one of the players that I was incredibly unfamiliar with going into this draft. And when I looked at his highlights, when I looked at his stats, when I looked at the clips and everything about him, I don't know why he was drafted so high. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think this was a horrible pick coming in from Charlotte. I give this an F. This is not a good pick. There was one instance where I saw he decided for some baffling reason to take a half-court shot with 14 seconds left on the shot clock. Now, I don't know what was going on. I don't know why he took that shot. I don't know, maybe that was just a fluky shot, but drafting him so high at number 6, I'm confused. I'm genuinely confused with this one. And it's there's no other words to describe it other than just being confused. He only averaged 9 points on France and was only shooting 32% from 3 and 30-something% from the field. So not very good efficiency and not very good production in the scoring. So why draft him so high at number 6? There is the reason why they drafted him, or the thought and the process and the idea behind drafting him is that he's going to develop into something great. That's the thought process. A lot of people on Twitter are calling him mini Giannis, I guess you could say. And I'm just you can't make that assumption that somebody is just going to be an experimented player and he's going to be the next Giannis. That is a crazy comparison to start with, at least in my opinion, because Giannis is regarded as one of the most dominant players that the NBA has right now. And Shaq, he even compares himself to Giannis. He says, if I was in the league, I would be Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's me right there. You can't make that comparison. Now, the next player, this is going to go way over the time limit, so I'm probably, I have to, because this is just how important the draft is. Now, the next is the UConn center that I mentioned before, Donovan Clingan, and the Blazers ended up picking him. Now, I would give this an A+. Only reason why the only thing that's holding me back from giving it an A+ is the fact that Portland already has a starting center in DeAndre Ayton. So DeAndre Ayton needs to be, aware that his starting position might be a little bit in jeopardy and things of that nature. And honestly, he's, that's... I think this is a great pickup. And the fact that he wasn't picked up, earlier in the draft is a little bit surprising to me. I would have thought that, Charlotte would have drafted him, and I definitely didn't expect the Blazers to draft him either. So I give it an A-, only because, they already have a starting center. Now we have one of my personal favorites, Rob Dillingham. He was drafted by the Spurs. A lot of people, a lot of Spurs fans, they really wanted him on the team. But ironically, the second he got drafted by the Spurs, immediately gets traded over to Minnesota. So why did the Spurs trade him? I don't know. I genuinely thought this guard would have been a much better pickup and a much better pairing with Victor Wembanyama than Stephon Castle. Castle is good. Don't get me wrong. Castle is good. But Rob Dillingham is a bucket getter. He can get you buckets. And he's also a great playmaker as well. Pairing him with Victor would have been amazing, in my opinion. Then, in the 9th pick, Zach Edey was drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies. I give that a B-, and I don't really think that Zach Edey is that much of a talent in the NBA. A lot of people compare him to Boban, and that makes a lot of sense considering how slow he is. And he is tall, yes, but unlike Victor Wembanyama, he doesn't have the fast footwork that he has. So, not a big fan of Zach's game, and I'm not entirely sure how that's going to fit well, especially with someone like Ja Morant, a well-known slasher in the NBA. I mean, having Zach Edey in the paint while Ja Morant is, trying to attack the paint, it's just attracting more unwanted attention. That's just me, though. I mean, granted, maybe Ja Morant's just going to jump over them. Who knows? And miss the dunk. But aside from that, next we have Cody Williams. He was drafted by the Utah Jazz, and I give it a good grade. I give it an A. I mean, I don't really know. I'm not really that familiar with Cody Williams' game, and there's not really much that needs to be talked about that. I keep forgetting to just go through these players. There's Zach Edey. I apologize. And then here is Cody Williams. Like I'm just really focused on like just the draft and these players. So I apologize for that as well. And with that is going to be the end of the first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment where I try to speed run all of the picks that were recently in the NBA draft, as well as talk about who I think is the biggest steal in the draft, this kid named Dalton Knecht that the Lakers got, and Bucks, Rays, and Bolts was talking a little bit about that in the comments. So I'm going to address that right after the short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Lakers and their big steal of the draft, as well as the rest of the players that were drafted in this draft. I like to acknowledge all of the talent and all the basketball players that were drafted in this draft, because I think it would be unfair if I were to just skim over a little bit instead of talk about all of them. So I'm just going to, this time I'm going to be a little bit shorter. I'm just going to give my grades, like, instead of all of my opinions like I did in the first segment. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Really ups the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and, hold on, light focus, please. Just need to fix the light settings. All right, there we go. So with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and we can go ahead and talk about the next few players that I'm going to bring up in this draft. So obviously, Knecht is one of them, but I'm going to go in order, and then I'm going to come back around and talk about Knecht and my overall opinions about him. So the 11th pick in the draft was Mayes Buzelis. So I give that pick an A plus for the Chicago Bulls. Then Nikola Topic, he was picked by the Oklahoma City Thunder. I give that a B plus. Next we have Devin Carter. He was drafted by the Kings at number 13. I think this is a fantastic pick, and I give it an A plus plus. Like, that is a great pick. Like, go above an A, everything above an A. Great pick. And next is Bub Carrington for the Washington Wizards. Kind of funny. He looks like a female. In my opinion, like, no disrespect whatsoever. I just think it's a little bit funny. He's a great player as well, and he got drafted to the Wizards. I give it an A, like, solid pick. Then there's Kel'el Ware. I'm not even going to lie, that name is a little bit difficult to pronounce. I'm a little bit neutral on this one. I'm not really familiar with his game like that. So, those are the notes that I had. Next for the Sixers, Jared McCain. I think this is a great pick for the Sixers. I think this is an A- pick. And then we move on to the stud, the beautiful, the fantastic 17th overall pick that the Lakers had. They used it on Dalton Knecht. Now this, the biggest steal in the entire draft, and I'll run it back and I'll explain why after I go over the rest of these players. So Tristan da Silva, he got drafted by the Magic. I give that an A. Jacoby Walter, fun fact, he was named after Jordan and Kobe. So Jacoby, in case you guys didn't know. So he got drafted to the Raptors, and I give that a solid A. Next, there's Jalen Tyson he got drafted to the Cavs, and I also give that a solid rating of an A. It might be a B. It's like all dependent. I'm not really a big fan of his game, but an A, still a really good pick, and a B, around there, around that kind of rating. Next, we at the 21 pick we have Yves Missy. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. Pardon me if I completely messed that up. He got drafted by the Pelicans. I give that a B just because, I'm not entirely sure on that one. That's a little bit of a toss-up for me. Then we have the Suns. They had the number 22 pick, but they eventually decided to trade the number 2, that 22 pick to the Denver Nuggets. So Darren Holmes II is on the Denver Nuggets this time as opposed to being on the Suns. I think this is a good pickup. I mean, I'm very surprised that the Suns just decided not to keep him. But yeah, that's essentially really the best. That's essentially the ranking that I gave him. Next is AJ Johnson for the Bucks. I don't know what the Bucks are doing with their drafting. I think this is a horrible pick. And I think they just wasted their 23rd their draft pick for this player. I mean, not a very good pick. He averaged, I believe, only 3 points in the league that he was in, and I don't know. I don't get this pick. I genuinely don't. So I give that a C. That is a very questionable pick. Next, the Knicks, they had the 24 pick. They ended up trading that pick over to Washington, and they ended up choosing Keyshawn George. That was the guy that the Wizards ended up wanting in that 24 pick. So the Knicks just picked it for them. I give that an A. I think he's a solid player, and on a rebuilding Wizards team, not a bad option. Then the Knicks again, they had back-to-back picks, so they had the 25th pick, and they used it on Pacome Diet. Forgive me if I botched that name, but that's basically I give it an A-. Next is Dylan Jones. He got drafted by the Wizards and is then traded to the Thunder. I give that an A. Terrence Shannon Jr. was drafted by the Timberwolves. I also think that is a very huge steal. I'm a very big fan of his game. Then there's Ryan Dunn. They had the drafted by the Nuggets, but was then traded over to Phoenix. So I think that's a pretty good acquisition as well for the Phoenix Suns. Then Isaiah Collier, drafted by the Utah Jazz. I think that's another great steal coming in from the Jazz. And then finally at number 30 is Baylor Sherierman. Again, forgive me if I botched that name. Coming in from the Celtics. Doesn't really matter who the Celtics draft because, I mean, they're just the better team, and it doesn't matter. So let's move on just with the little time that we have to talk about Dalton Knecht. Now, this kid is a huge steal. Just look at these numbers. He played 30 minutes in college, right? And he averaged 21 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist on 50, 40, 70 shooting splits. That is amazing. I mean, averaging 20 in college is it's not an easy thing to do because with how team-oriented college basketball is, averaging 20 isn't something that even the best scorers in college, sometimes they barely average 20. And I genuinely think that this is a great pickup This is, and there goes there goes the phone going off, just making loud noises, which is fantastic. And I think this is a good steal. Like, this is definitely, I thought that the Lakers, they were going to waste this pick on drafting Bronny, which would have been a huge mistake, a very huge mistake, and I'll explain why that's a big mistake in the fourth segment later on. But great pickup for the Lakers. Definitely a great pickup. LeBron has already given him his praise, like, before he was even drafted. Just by watching him play, he already gave him his praise. So, great pickup, fantastic player. Nothing more that needs to be said about that, because that is the biggest steal in the entire draft. So, with that out of the way, that's it for the second segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk about the Knicks yet again, and OG Anunoby's incredible contract that he signed with the Knicks. I am incredibly happy for him. This is great. This is randy dandy, beautiful. I'm going to talk about that in the third segment, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I apologize for that break. I had a little something that I had to do. And in the third segment, we are going to be talking a little bit about OG Anunoby and his brand new contract with the New York Knicks. He is loaded to the brim with this new contract. This is an insane contract. And I mean, it's literally just like so much money coming into this, going into this contract. I'm just pulling up the contract deals right now, and let's see. Let me just go ahead and pull these up. He signed a 5-year deal with the Knicks, amounting to a total of $210 million, which is it's a ridiculous amount of money for a role player, in my personal opinion. Obviously, he brings tremendous value to the team, so it's like, you needed him on the team in order to compete with the Celtics regardless. So I don't really see this as a bad signing. Now, only time will tell. Like, we can't really just immediately determine that, oh, this is a bad signing for the New York Knicks. Like, only time will tell with this one, because we have to see sort of how this develops. I learned from my mistake of saying that, some of these players are going to be a player is overpaid, this, that, and the other, because I thought last year that Jaylen Brown, I thought he was ridiculously overpaid, being the most paid athlete in the entirety of the NBA. But that ended up being worth it in the end of the day. The fact that he was the most paid athlete in the NBA, because you kept him, and he ended up winning Eastern Conference Finals MVP and the Finals MVP. So that was more than worth it. Definitely worth spending all of that money just to make sure that he doesn't leave. So I can't really say that I'm going to learn from my mistake, and I am not going to say that OG Anunoby is overpaid simply because of, how the contract is now. Like, we still have to see how it develops into the future, and we still have to see, like, just the long-term effects of this contract and, how it works. Because genuinely, I think I said that the Knicks, they have to make sure that they get OG by any means possible. And they ended up getting OG. So now there's, like, really no doubt in my mind that Julius Randle is going to be gone from the Knicks. Because this is a huge amount of money to be paying OG Anunoby. And I genuinely think, like, from a glance, like, from what he's done for the team and the value that he brings for the team, I do think that as of right now at least, I think it's a bit worth it. Because, it's unfortunate that you have to pay him so much. But keeping him on the team was really, like, the important step. Right now, we're just going to... It's only time will really tell just, how good of a move this was. So I think for those of you guys that are saying that he might be overpaid and he might, this is a lot of money for a role player, just wait a little bit, because we still have to see, like, who knows? What if the Knicks win a championship? And what if OG Anunoby actually is able to play defense against some of the best perimeter players in the league? Like, what if he gets a stop on what if he gets all the stops on Tatum? What if he just makes Tatum a non-factor in the entire playoff series? Like, there's so many things that could happen, and there's so many outcomes that it's really, like, obviously, if he just doesn't perform, and if he just pulls a Jordan Poole, just plays really, really bad under the new contract despite playing really, really good when he was previously being a little bit underpaid, only time will tell. So the Knicks, they went 20-3 when OG Anunoby was in the lineup in the regular season. And that's really, like, the most jarring stat that I can really look at when I'm talking about the OG Anunoby and his season. Because, like, seriously, 20-3, that is ridiculous value. While he might not be the primary scorer for the team, the fact that every single time he's playing, the Knicks are winning, what more could you ask for? Like, if he's bringing winning, take all the money. Take all the money you want, because winning is the most important thing in this sport, in my opinion. And if you can impact winning, you don't have to impact it in scoring. If you can impact your team winning in any single facet of the game, I think you deserve that money. And especially, like, with the impact that he has. His defense is amazing. They were up 2-0 against Indiana in the Eastern Conference semifinals before he had to miss the next 4 games after injuring his hamstring. And he scored a playoff career high of 28 points in Game 2. Like, he was a stud in the postseason. And that's the Knicks. They would have beaten the Pacers if they were healthy. They would have beaten the Pacers. And I'm really mad that they got injured like this. It stings, even though, I'm a Nets fan. It stings because the Celtics, I don't like them. But aside from that, I think this is a great contract for OG. Maybe a little bit too much. Maybe just a little bit. Tiny bit. Just a little bit too much. But only time will tell in the future with this player and with the New York Knicks and the squad that they have. The Villanova Knicks, they're amazing. They're fantastic. They have the chemistry already. And on top of that, the defense with OG and even Mikal Bridges, who is also a relatively competent defender. This is a fantastic lineup. This lineup, now the Knicks, they have to worry about getting Isaiah Hartenstein. That is the next player that the Knicks have to worry about in free agency. And then after that, I feel like they have all the pieces that they need to compete with the Celtics. Like, literally from matchup to matchup, I think they have the best possible matchups. Now, honestly, I've been thinking about it, and when you go up against the Celtics, I genuinely think that DiVincenzo needs to be that scoring option coming off the bench. Now, as much as I like DiVincenzo, as much as he was fantastic in the postseason, as great as he was, Mikal Bridges, he's been, in my opinion, I think he's the better player than DiVincenzo. However, maybe the Knicks, they actually have, a loyalty aspect to their starting lineups, and they're going to be like, we're going to put DiVincenzo in the lineup, and you can come off the bench. We'll see how it goes. Not entirely sure how the lineups are going to be, or maybe even Josh Hart is going to be the one that comes off the bench. Who knows? But you know what? Maybe that's a better option. Maybe Josh Hart is probably better coming off the bench. But I was thinking that Josh Hart would be better in the starting lineup, at least against the Celtics, simply because of his defensive presence and the fact that, DiVincenzo, while I'm not saying that he's a bad defender, he's not nearly the same defender as Josh Hart is, in my opinion. And I think that Celtics versus Knicks matchup is going to be legendary. And I look very forward to seeing the Knicks in the postseason, because I know for sure the Brooklyn Nets are not making the postseason whatsoever. Not happening, not even in my wildest dreams. I know that's never going to happen. That's not going to happen for a while. We're in the rebuilding, so I'm all for the rebuild. And the Knicks, they're going to be in the postseason. Hopefully they can compete. Hopefully they can, do something about those Celtics. And, if they end up winning the championship, all power to them. So that's basically all I have for you in the third segment. So now we will go ahead and pivot back to the NBA draft and talk about Bronny James and how he wasn't drafted in the first round and just my overall opinions on him and what I think is going to happen. And I'll do that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm going to be focusing a little bit about Bronny James and why he wasn't drafted in the first round and why I don't think he's going to be drafted in the second round. So I'm just going to pull up my notes real quick, so just give me just a few seconds real quick. Okay, here we go. And here we have our notes. Let me just go ahead and pull up the image of Bronny. There we go. So earlier in the comment section, somebody asked me, where do I think Bronny James is going? And honestly, with the way that this after a while, after a little bit of thinking and after some careful consideration, I don't think Bronny is going to get drafted. As much as, a lot of people are pushing that narrative and how popular his name is, this, that, and the other, I don't really think he's going to get drafted. There's several major issues with his game that could be a problem and could be a risk when you're drafting. And, I know, like, how could you say this about the glorious king's offspring? How could you say this? But genuinely, like, he's not that guy. I'm sorry to say it, but Bronny is a little bit overhyped with this draft, simply because his dad is LeBron James. And, I'm not going to deny his work ethic. I am not going to deny his skills as a player, and I'm not doing any of that. And I do respect his confidence for trying to be in the NBA draft and things of that nature. But I genuinely do not think that any team is going to take a risk in drafting him. And I'll give you guys several reasons. So, 1, his height. He is 6'1", 6'2". One of those two, no idea which one's accurate. And honestly, a lot of the times, a lot of NBA players, they like to lie about their height. Kevin Durant, he did that before. And there are other players that lied about their heights as well. And being 6'1" and 6'2" at a point guard, it's not ideal. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, but Jalen Brunson's a point guard, and he's playing really well in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell, he's a point guard. He's playing really well in the NBA. Isaiah Thomas, Allen Iverson, they were all in the NBA. Now, the difference between all of those players and Bronny is that they're known for scoring. They can put the ball in the hoop. It doesn't matter who's in front of them. They're putting the ball in the hoop. And like all the players that I just mentioned, Jalen Brunson, while he is short, he can put the ball in the hoop. And Donovan Mitchell, while he's also short, he can sure put the ball in the hoop. Allen Iverson can put the ball in the hoop. Isaiah Thomas, both of the Isaiah Thomases, when the one from the Pistons and the one from the Boston Celtics, they were both able to put the ball in the hoop. Now, obviously, the Celtics' Isaiah Thomas got ruined by Boston, unfortunately, and wasn't putting the ball in the hoop nearly as much afterwards, but still, he was able to put the ball in the hoop. And that was where teams found his value, because while you are going to be a defensive liability at that height, you can put the ball in the hoop. And that brings up another issue with Bronny's game. The fact that his defense is the strongest thing to his game. He is a 6'2" guard, which immediately makes him a liability on the defense in the NBA. He's going to go up against a bunch of point guards that are just way taller than him, and on top of that, running a pick and roll, he makes him an immediate mismatch every single time that a team switches. And as an NBA team, you can't really have a defensive liability in your rotation unless that defensive liability is getting you buckets at a consistent rate. And that is the problem with Bronny James. He is not known as a competent scorer. And his height, combined with the fact that he's not known as a competent scorer, is a huge problem. Because, sure, he can play defense, but what does that matter when everyone else is going to be taller than you and everyone else can shoot over you, and you're just going to be a liability off of every single switch? That is the big problem with Bronny James and his game. His height, a major problem that I completely overlooked. Like, I genuinely thought that Bronny was a little bit taller than being 6'2", but granted, I mean, I'm incredibly short as a person, so I mean, being 6'2" is ridiculously tall in my eyes. So, but in the NBA's perspective, that is not that tall, and that is a huge liability to have on the defensive side of the ball. No matter how good his defense was in college, it's not going to be the same in the NBA. Teams are going to exploit that. Teams are going to abuse that. And when you're not a competent scorer, tough. That is very, very tough. So, because he's not a very good scorer and because of his height, I don't think he's going to get drafted. Like, that is too much. That is too much of a risk to draft him. Now, this is why I believe that he should have waited and developed his game in college, so that way he can sort of develop his reputation as being much more of, a much better scorer than what he was, as well as, just a much better player overall with the experience that he has in college, playing against more competition, as opposed to just getting thrown into the NBA just off of the first year. So that's sort of the big reason why I don't think Bronny is going to get drafted in this year's draft class. Now, if he does, all power to him. But if the Lakers don't draft him, I don't think any team is going to express interest in Bronny, which is really going to bring up the next question: what will Bronny do? Where will he go? What's the next step for Bronny if he doesn't get drafted? Is he going to complain? Is he going to talk to his dad about it? Who knows? But from what I know, the LeBron and Bronny, they both want they want Bronny to be selected based off of his talent and not based off of the fact that LeBron is his father. Now, it's like, it's tough, obviously. Like, I mean, it's a really tough decision, and it's a flip of a coin, and it's a really huge risk in drafting that guard. Now, there was an argument that was presented to me saying that maybe if he gets to play, or if he gets to train under a bunch of NBA trainers, they can really focus his game, and they can hone in on his skill set and his his defense and his offense, and they can improve that if he was to work with the coaches in the NBA. Like, I can somewhat see that, but at the same time, I think that's still a very, very high risk in trying to work with someone that's that tall and isn't really known for being that much of a scorer. I think it's a huge risk, in my personal opinion. Again, that's just my opinion. Now, we have to see a little bit later on in the rest of the day. I'm looking at the TV right now because, the draft, it's supposed to start, I believe, at like 4 o'clock today this time. So we do have to see just how well the player, how the players are going to be drafted, and if the Lakers are really going to just use their pick on Bronny. I don't think that's a good idea, though. That's just my opinion. So that's it for the fourth segment and why I don't think Bronny's going to get drafted. And with that, we can go right ahead and go into the fifth segment, where we give a quick update on the NBA and the free agency moves, because there are 3 new reports that I have for you guys that I kind of want to talk about. I want to talk about all of them because I feel like they're all relatively important. So I will be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to talk about some of the most recent free agent moves and some of the most recent free agent news. And, oh, you've got to be kidding me. I just looked at my phone, and I see a notification from Instagram saying, from according to sideline sources, again, this is the same source that predicted that JJ Redick was going to be the coach for the Lakers. The Lakers are showing interest in Bronny James. Oh no, he's going to get drafted at the 55th pick. That seems like that's what's going to happen. But again, we'll see. The Lakers are expressing interest. Who knows? Maybe they'll go ahead and they'll pick someone else, but yeah, this is that's crazy news. What a shocker. But aside from that, let's go right ahead and talk about the free agency news that happened over the the span of the last few days. Let me just go ahead and pull up my notes yet again. I'm very disorganized today. I apologize for that, everyone. But anyways, two players, they recently signed a contract with their team. So we have Nick Claxton. He signed a 4-year, $100 million contract with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, as a Nets fan, I think that's overpaid. I think he's incredibly overpaid. $100 million for 4 years, that is a lot of money to give to this guy. I think he's rather overpaid. Now, granted, maybe, he'll develop into that money. Like, he'll develop into the type of player that deserves that money within the 4 years. But as of right now, I think that's a lot of money to give to Claxton. Now, he'll even be part of the foundation after agreeing to the contract. A day after Mikal Bridges became disenchanted and wanted out to go play for the Knicks, Claxton, an unrestricted free agent, committed to spending his prime years in Brooklyn, according to the New York Post. Now, again, I like the signing. I genuinely like the signing. I really like that they brought him back, but for that much money, I'm not a big fan of. I don't really like his, I just don't like how much money they're spending on someone that can't really shoot the ball like that. That is just me. That is my opinion. I do understand the value that he brings. I understand the talent that he is on both the defensive side and, oh, my hair, what the heck is going on? And the talent that he brings rebounding the basketball as well. And, he could develop into that offensive type of player, but as of right now, I think that's a lot of money. I genuinely think that's a lot of money. And let me just go ahead and continue reading this article. It goes without saying that it is extremely rare for a second-round draft pick to secure this kind of contract. Most of them fade out of the league and go looking for contracts overseas. Claxton has earned this payday as arguably Brooklyn's best player. I understand, yes, he's the best player from last season, and what this article's saying, he's a great player and all that stuff. But I think, wait, that's a little bit too much money for Claxton. But that's just me though. And he is averaged a double-double while blocking more shots than any player other than Brook Lopez in the history of the Nets. Just goes to show you how amazing our franchise is. He's an all-defensive caliber guy, even though he wasn't selected for the all-defensive team. And most importantly, the biggest thing about him is that he plays in every single game. And he only missed 17 games in the last 2 seasons, which is Iron Man type of ball. So maybe that's why he was getting that kind of money. Now, he isn't a go-to scorer, which is, the biggest reason why I don't think giving him that much money was the best move, but he's really really good at dunking the ball. Unlike Ben Simmons, he's really good at dunking the ball. And he's shot 66% from the field. And he's shooting the best percentage in history among players with a career average of better than 10 points per game, and he converted on 70% of his shots in 2022-2023. So, again, I'm not saying that he's not a talented player. That's not what I'm saying. I just think that that's a little bit more, I think that's just a little bit more money than is needed. So, that's the first free agent signing that I wanted to talk about, because the next free agent that I do want to talk about, I'm sorry, this is a really rough day for me. I apologize for all the sudden stops. I don't usually have these stops. So next is Bam Adebayo. Now, he signed a huge contract as well. I'm just going to bring up my notes and talk a little bit about that in this, let me just find my notes real quick. Jeez, I am very, very rusty right now. I apologize to you guys. This is definitely not my brightest day, but, this is why we do it. This is why we learn. This is why we adapt. And, okay, here are my notes. Jeez, I couldn't find them. I need to get more organized. But he signed a $166 million deal for 3 years with the Miami Heat. Now, this is roughly $55.3 million a year. Did the math, and this was roughly $55.3 million a year. And this would make him one of the top 5 most paid players annually. So, like, you know, with the way that contracts are broken down, it's like, you know, year after year, it's like, you know, sometimes they'll make more money in the 3rd year of their contract as opposed to the 1st year of their contract. So it's all dependent on, like, just how annually the contracts are constructed. But this contract right here with Bam makes him the 5th most paid player annually in terms of contract, just annually. I hope follow me, guys. And this only puts him behind Damian Lillard with the Bucks, Jaylen Brown with the Celtics, Giannis Antetokounmpo with the Bucks, and Anthony Davis with the Lakers. So he is going to be one of the most paid players annually in the entire league. While some other notable young stars like Jason Tatum could soon surpass Bam Adebayo, the Heat's star should still rank among the league's highest paid centers for the duration of his contract, which runs through 2028 and 2029. Now, signing Bam Adebayo for that much money, that is really going to shift the free agency market, because I have a feeling that a lot of teams are going, and a lot of players are going to want to ask for that same amount of money while being either the second option or being the first option, or even more money than Bam. But this is a lot of money. Like, I'm genuinely surprised that Bam is making this much money compared to, you know, those rest of the players. Like, being in the top 5, I would have not expected Bam Adebayo to be in the top 5 of the most paid players. He averaged a double-double in 3 of his 7 NBA seasons. Since becoming a full-time starter, he averaged at least 15 points per game every season and no fewer than 9 rebounds per game. So I'm not saying that he's bad. I'm definitely not saying that he's bad. Adebayo's high watermark for assists per game came during 2021 or 2020-2021 when he got 5 assists per game. He hasn't been a big playmaker in recent seasons, with Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler taking on larger roles, but Adebayo's season-by-season stats, like, you know, they're not that bad. They're genuinely not. Like, I'm not saying that he's a bad player. I just think that's a lot of money to be giving him. Now, he averaged 18 points in 2020-2021, 19 2021-2022, 20 points in 2022-2023, and then 19 points in 2023-2024. So that's his point production. That's his that's the prowess that he brings, the value that he brings with the team. And not only that, he's also a pretty competent rim protector. And another thing about his game as well is his versatility and being able to switch on a lot of the perimeter players, because, like, while he is short and undersized for a center, that ultimately makes him a better option to switch on a lot of these players, and that will enable him to be a little bit faster on his feet, given, you know, that he's not that tall, and he'll be able to keep up with some of the guards and some of their offensive skills. Now, again, I just think that's so much money to be giving him. I genuinely think that's just so much money to be giving him, but that's just me. I mean, maybe I'm just not used to the rest of, like, just how big the contracts are for these players now, and how much money all these players are making. Because, like, if you were to rewind the league a few years ago, that much money, that is a huge amount of money to be giving a player. And it's like, you better be like a top option on the team to be making that kind of money. And which he is. I'm not saying that he's not. I'm definitely not saying that he's not. I just think a little bit too much. Just a little bit. So, finally, in the free agency news, we have a report coming in from claiming that Klay Thompson might go to the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic seem to be like the ideal place for Klay Thompson, and it seems to be the place that makes sense for him to go. Like, that is, they're the favorites right now in signing Klay Thompson. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's, like, you know, awareness, because it seems like all the other teams that I mentioned before, it seems like the Orlando Magic are going to be the best one, and, like, the team that is definitely going to have the best chance in grabbing him. So that is all I have for you guys today on this podcast. I apologize for being rather poor in my speaking skills today, and just being like, that's literally the best way I could describe it. Just I was stuttering. It was really bad. I apologize for that, guys. I'll do better for the next segment. But that is all I have for you on this podcast for today. So thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for you guys today on this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care. Oh, and be sure to tune into the draft later today. But that's all that I got for you guys. But as always, take care. Really this time.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.